Radhe Radhe. Today is Saturday, 10th August 2024. Here we are to present you this recap video for today's Bhagavad Gita study session as we continue along our journey of chapter 9. Along with me, here is Mummy.
Radhe Radhe.
So I'll bring up the screen and you'll see the verses that we covered. Of course, before the two verses for today, we had a recap quiz, the usual recap quiz that covered content from a while back, 3 weeks ago. So that was on chapter 9, verses 18 and 19. Please do take a look at the upcoming slides. You can get them using the information in the description below and keep on practicing and reviewing your material. And then, of course, we covered today chapter 9, verses 20 and 21. First up, we'll start with chapter 9, verse 20.
Traividyamama soma pafa papa yagner ishtva swargatim prarthayante te punyam asadhya surendra lokam ashnanti divyan divi deva bhogan.
So chapter 9, verse 20 has the catchphrase as a question for you to think about, juice of joy. We talked about this in class, of course, juice here referring to that soma juice coming as that remnant or benefit of yagnas. But is that the one that we seek? Is that the one giving the joy that we truly desire? So juice of joy, something to think about. As we mentioned in class, both of today's verses, chapter 9, verse 20 and verse 21, connected, and they have material and commentary details that we have seen before in other chapters as well. The crux, of course, being helping us to realize which goal or path we want to follow. So chapter 9, verse 20, unlike in chapter 9, verses 11 and 12, it talks about those who at least believe in God. They're not atheists, but they are not devotees, the loving devotees who truly admire and follow the path of just worshipping Sri Krishna. These are people who are performing Vedic rituals. They follow the path of Karam Kand, as well as what we learned this time as Trey Vidya. So all of that leads to some kind of material benefit, but at most only taking us to the celestial heavens. People worship Lord Indra or other celestial gods, often through yagnas or fire sacrifices. They are performing pious or good deeds, but that doesn't count as devotion. And so, of course, there is this repeated continuation of life and death, birth and death. Breaking away from that cycle of bondage is not yet possible. So there is indeed some defect in these even super, super great and extensive celestial pleasures that one gets by following the path of these Vedic rituals. That, of course, comes up in the next verse, chapter 9, verse 21.
Etam bhuktva swargalokam vishalam क्षीणे पुण्ये मर्त्यलोकं विशन्ति एवं त्रयी धर्मम् अनुप्रपन्ना गतागतं कामकामा लभन्ते.
So chapter 9, verse 21, its catchphrase here is merit system. Two ways to look at it, as we mentioned in class. The first one, of course, we talk about those merits that people accumulate through the good deeds. And once, of course, they are exhausted in the celestial heavens, eventually one gets back to earth. Of course, is that the merit system promotion that we are actually seeking to follow? We discussed in class, of course, that those of us, of course, wanting to follow the path of God realization, there's a different level of eligibility or merit or qualification required there. It's, of course, as we learned today, well beyond Vedic rituals. In fact, it sounds simple, of course. It involves bhakti, love for God, and that singular focus, of course, on the Supreme Lord. So chapter 9, verse 21 again, merit system. And here, Sri Krishna himself says, when people do get that quote-unquote promotion to the celestial heaven, they go with a certain stockpile of the account of their good deeds. As Mummy reminded us and stressed upon in class, when those merits get depleted, exhausted, that stock is done, then eventually the return is only back to earth. And from there again, people have to make a choice. Do they follow Vedic rituals? Do they, do something else? Or perhaps and hopefully follow the path of God realization by solely loving the Supreme Lord. So again, all these pleasures in heaven, the defect there is that they are temporary. They will still take us back to earth. That eternal quest that the soul has for joy, for happiness, for bliss is still existent. And that is only going to be satisfied when it is channeled in the direction of God. And of course, when God graces us with everything that He has to offer to then help us have that union, that yog with God. As you see, of course, and we mentioned, there are several verses and quotations that Swamiji has in this verse to help again elucidate these concepts. So content from the Bhagavatam, Ramayana, two places actually, and in the Narad Puran. There's also, of course, the example of each of us being kicked around like a football on the field, and we are being kicked around by Maya. You've often heard that from Swamiji or in particular Maharajji. So keep that analogy in mind as well, because it helps us realize what really we should be doing or spending our time and energy on. So to correct, as Swamiji says, that mistake of going to heaven, again, hopefully at some stage, we as souls will strive toward God realization. This second of the two from the Ramayana, the verses, is again very instructive and helpful because it is from Lord Ram himself. And he had said that the people of Ayodhya, really lucky and fortunate to have birth on the earth planet. And that is something that even the residents of heaven, even those celestial gods, seek. So then why not simply follow that path of God realization and loving devotion? As we had showed you in class, the visual to keep in mind perhaps is this flyer image here, and the question to ponder with the pun on the words: leave the roots and root for the leaves. How do you water your plants? We all know the answer, of course. You go to the source, go to the roots, worship Sri Krishna, everything else is taken care of. No need to do Vedic rituals, no need to follow that path. And of course, as we know, water going to the roots will spread to the branches, leaves, etc. So leave the roots, we know, is not the answer. And root as in cheer for the leaves, we know also that's not the answer here. Focus on the roots. How do you water your plants? How do you perform your worship? Everyone hopefully is aligned now. Mummy, I'll pass it over to you to help share with us some important words to learn from Sanskrit and, of course, other key concepts and takeaways.
Thank you, Gagan. And the first word to learn, that is from verse 20, is Traividya. Traividya means Karm Kand or Vedic rituals. Now, what are these Vedic rituals? What happens that this universe has given us so much. So Vedic rituals are that you are thanking all those celestial gods by doing a yagna and offering all those products to fire and thanking those celestial gods. It's a very good deed. It's a pious deed. And yes, it is very purifying. It purifies the atmosphere. You feel very good when you do a yagna. And then comes out a somras. Somras means that nectar. Okay. So it is very enjoyable, no doubt about it. And it helps you to attain many of the, uh, it is basically a fruitive activity whereby you are thanking those celestial gods and asking for boons, and you are granted boons. And then such people, they go to heaven, Swarg, and they enjoy loads of pleasures there. Okay. The only negative part here is that Krishna is telling us that even after enjoying those 1,000 times more pleasures than earth, again, when the account is exhausted, shine, exhaustion of all the deposits which you had done as your pious deeds in your human form, once they are exhausted, again you come back to this earth. So that means you are rotating in that cycle of birth and death. Instead, Krishna is giving us a sure short formula. He's saying that you move to loving devotion. With that loving devotion, you will get God realization. So another word from verse number 21, the important word is gata gatam. Gata gatam means that is repeated coming and going. That is what is happening. So what is Krishna saying here? I will recite these two verses which Swamiji has given in his commentary to explain this verse. One is from Bhagavatam that says, Tavat pramodate swarge yavat punyam samapyate shina punyah patartya vag anichan kala chalitaha. That means till the account is exhausted, you can enjoy those pleasures in Swarg. After that, you have to come back. Then Ramayan says something. Swarga huswalap ant dukhdai. You know what does this mean? You reach there, heaven, but this is not permanent. It is temporary. In the end, again misery, because you have to come back on this earth. And then Ramayan says one very important thing. Bade bhag मानुष तनु पावा सुर दुर्लभ सब ग्रंथ निगावा. Sab grantha nigawa means all the scriptures are saying that you are very, very lucky that you got this human form. Why? Because it is only in this human form you can put deposits in your account of good karmas. Okay, this is the only place, this is the only species who can do God's bhakti and deposit in the account of good deeds. Now, Swarg, we have understood that it is temporary, but it is only God realization when you reach Golok. How do you reach Golok? Whereby you are getting that eternal happiness that will happen only with loving devotion. Loving devotion means now you are away from this material energy, Maya. You have cut the attachment to worldly things. All those strings you have attached to Krishna's lotus feet, and your heart and mind is always attached to that Supreme Lord in loving devotion. So that is the formula Krishna is saying to achieve God realization, the eternal happiness that our individual soul is all the time yearning for, as we are the fragments of that Supreme Soul. With that, over to you, Gagan.
Thank you, Mummy. And on that note, in fact, loving devotion that you stressed upon, well, I'll encourage everyone, if they can, to join our Bhagavad Gita recitation series. It's, of course, moving to a new chapter, and you'll find out which one that is and really benefit from the bliss it offers. Also, of course, moving to a new time slot. So it's going to be Saturday nights, 9 p.m. Central Time, which becomes Sunday mornings, 7:30 a.m. India time. Keep that visual in mind, keep the goal in mind, and try to think about this question that you're seeing here as well. That'll be, of course, starting from this weekend. With that, of course, we get towards the end of this recap video. As we mentioned, when we meet next week, which will be Saturday, 17th August, 2024, as always, we'll start off with a recap quiz. So please go through this recap video, covering again chapter 9, verses 20 and 21. Come prepared, come with Swamiji's versions of Bhagavad Gita, the Song of God, and we look forward to your keen participation. Till then, thank you so much, and Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.